Ancient Egypt is one of the most fascinating civilizations in history, but some of its strangest discoveries sound more like fiction than fact. From a royal dagger made from metal that fell from space, to a pregnancy test using grain, millions of mummified animals, and even a working prosthetic toe. These are 7 ancient Egypt facts that seem impossible, and every single one of them sounds unbelievable. But it is absolutely true. When archaeologists opened King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, they discovered thousands of extraordinary treasures. But one object was unlike anything else inside. Wrapped beside the young pharaoh's body was a beautifully crafted iron dagger, complete with a decorated gold handle and an ornate sheath. That might not sound unusual today, but Tutankhamun lived during the Bronze Age, when high-quality iron was extremely rare in Egypt. For decades, researchers wondered where the metal had come from. Modern scientific testing eventually revealed the answer. The blade contains unusually high levels of nickel and cobalt, the same chemical pattern commonly found in iron meteorites. In other words, the metal used to create King Tut's dagger did not originally come from the ground. It fell from space. Thousands of years ago, Egyptian craftspeople somehow obtained a fragment of a meteorite and carefully shaped it into a smooth, polished royal weapon. This would have been incredibly difficult, because the Egyptians had not yet developed the advanced iron smelting techniques that later civilizations would use. To the people of ancient Egypt, metal falling from the sky may have seemed sacred, a gift sent directly from the gods. And that may explain why this extraordinary dagger was placed beside the pharaoh for his journey into the afterlife. A weapon forged from a rock that traveled through space and fell to earth thousands of years ago. Sounds unbelievable, but it is absolutely true. Thousands of years before pharmacies sold modern pregnancy tests, the ancient Egyptians had developed a surprisingly unusual method of their own. A woman who believed she might be pregnant was instructed to urinate onto separate bags of seeds over several days. One bag contained barley, while the other contained emmer wheat, an ancient variety of wheat commonly grown in Egypt. According to the test, if either set of seeds began to sprout, the woman was considered pregnant. The Egyptians even believed they could predict the baby's sex. If the barley grew first, they believed the baby would be a boy. If the wheat sprouted first, they believed it would be a girl. That part of the test had no reliable scientific basis, but the pregnancy test itself may not have been complete nonsense. In 1963, researchers reportedly recreated the ancient experiment and found that urine from pregnant women encouraged the seeds to grow around 70% of the time, while urine from men and women who were not pregnant usually did not. Scientists have suggested that increased hormone levels in pregnancy have influenced the seed's growth, although the method was nowhere near as reliable as a modern test. The instructions were recorded on an Egyptian medical papyrus dating back more than 3,000 years, making it one of the earliest known written pregnancy tests. Using bags of grain to discover whether someone was pregnant sounds unbelievable, but it is absolutely true. Thousands of years ago, ancient Egyptian craftspeople created a color that did not exist naturally as a ready-made pigment. Today, we call it Egyptian blue, and it is widely considered the first synthetic pigment ever produced by humans. To make it, craftspeople mixed ingredients including sand or crushed quartz, limestone, and alkaline materials such as natron, and a copper compound. They then heated the mixture in a furnace to temperatures of around 900 degrees Celsius. The result was a hard, glassy blue material that could be crushed and ground into a vivid pigment. Egyptian artists used it to decorate tombs, statues, coffins, and sacred objects, creating brilliant blue details associated with the sky, the Nile, and the gods. But its most astonishing secret was only revealed with modern technology. When Egyptian blue is illuminated with visible light, it produces a powerful glow in the near-infrared spectrum, something human eyes cannot see, but special cameras can detect. That glow is so distinctive that researchers can find tiny particles of the pigment even when the original blue has faded, been covered by varnish, or become completely invisible. A color engineered in ancient furnaces, whose hidden glow can still reveal lost artwork thousands of years later. Sounds unbelievable, but it is absolutely true. When most people imagine an Egyptian mummy, they picture a pharaoh wrapped in linen inside a golden coffin. But the ancient Egyptians also mummified animals, and they did it on an almost unimaginable scale. Archaeologists have discovered enormous underground catacombs containing millions of mummified cats, dogs, ibises, falcons, crocodiles, fish, and even tiny shrews. Some were beloved pets preserved, so they could accompany their owners into the afterlife. Others were considered sacred animals connected to particular gods. Cats were associated with the goddess Bastet, crocodiles with Sobek, and ibises with Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. However, huge numbers were created as religious offerings. Pilgrims visiting temples could purchase a mummified animal and present it to a god, hoping their prayer would be heard or that they would receive protection and good fortune. This became so widespread that animals were sometimes raised near temples specifically for this purpose. Priests carefully prepared their bodies, wrapped them in linen, and placed them inside vast underground burial chambers. Some mummies were incredibly elaborate, with beautifully patterned bandages and decorated containers. Others contained only a few bones, feathers, or fragments hidden beneath the wrapping. Entire underground tunnels packed with millions of carefully wrapped creatures, all offered to the gods. Sounds unbelievable, but it is absolutely true. For generations, films and stories have shown the Great Pyramids being built by enormous armies of enslaved people, forced to drag stone beneath the Egyptian sun. But archaeological evidence tells a very different story. Near the pyramids at Giza, researchers discovered the remains of an organized workers' settlement. It included bakeries, food production areas, sleeping quarters, and even cemeteries for members of the workforce. The builders appear to have included permanent skilled craftspeople, alongside rotating groups of laborers who may have worked at Giza for part of the year. They were organized into crews and smaller teams, some of which were given proud names connected to the pharaoh. Instead of receiving modern wages, workers were supplied with food and other provisions. Evidence suggests that their diet included bread, beer, vegetables and, at times, large quantities of meat. The tombs of some workers were also placed close to the pyramids, an honor that would have been extremely unusual for people treated simply as disposable captives. This does not mean slavery never existed in ancient Egypt, but the evidence strongly challenges the familiar idea that the pyramids were constructed entirely by vast groups of chained slaves. One of history's greatest monuments may instead have been built by organized teams of trained and supported workers. Sounds unbelievable, but it is absolutely true. More than 3,000 years before modern trade unions existed, a group of ancient Egyptian workers decided they had finally had enough. Around 1155 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, skilled workers lived in a village called Deir el-Medina. Their job was to build and decorate the magnificent royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings. They were normally paid with regular food rations, including grain that could be used to make bread and beer. But when those rations were repeatedly delayed, the workers and their families began to go hungry. Instead of continuing to work, they put down their tools, left the royal necropolis and marched toward nearby temples. They staged sit-ins, blocked entrances and demanded that officials listen to their complaints. This was not a violent rebellion. It was an organized refusal to continue working until they received the payment they were owed. Officials eventually provided some food, but further delays caused the workers to protest again. The extraordinary events were recorded by a village scribe on a document, now known as the Turin Stripe Papyrus. Because that written account survived, the protest at Deir el-Medina is widely considered the earliest recorded labor strike in history. Workers stopping construction on a pharaoh's tomb because their wages had not arrived. Sounds unbelievable. But it is absolutely true. More than 2,500 years ago, ancient Egyptian craftspeople created something that looks surprisingly modern: a functioning artificial big toe. One remarkable example was discovered attached to the foot of a female mummy near Luxor. Dating from between approximately 950 and 710 BC, it was carefully constructed from 3 sections of wood and leather. It even included a simple hinge, a shaped front edge, and a flattened underside designed to make walking more comfortable. Another artificial toe, known as the Greville-Chester toe, was made from linen, glue, and plaster. Both objects showed signs of wear, suggesting they may have been used during life rather than added to the body only for burial. But researchers wanted stronger proof. They created accurate replicas and asked volunteers who were missing their right big toe to walk while wearing them with replica Egyptian sandals. Special cameras tracked their movement, while pressure-sensitive equipment measured how their feet touched the ground. The results showed that both volunteers could walk while wearing the artificial toes. The wooden and leather version was also described as extremely comfortable, and the devices helped prevent excessive pressure beneath the foot. These were not simply decorative replacements. They appear to have been carefully engineered to help real people walk. A practical prosthetic toe created thousands of years before modern medicine. Sounds unbelievable. But it is absolutely true.